Okay, I'm throwing down right now. I don't get the rancor that this film gets, especially nowadays. For as long as there has been such a thing as newspapers, the manipulation of facts has always been a constant threat that has resounded through the decades. This film even makes a dig at the duplicity of William Randolph Hearst and his willingness to fudge facts in order to sell papers and push his political agendas. In this modern world, we tend to neglect the fact that while we covet resources like water, food, and fuel, we tend to forget that information is one of the most dangerous. We try to protect water from getting contaminated, our food from getting spoiled, but information is the one resource that is oh so susceptible to molestation. Hearst knew all those years ago that he who owns the information owns the world. That principle has since become a plague on mankind to the point where we don't know what news sources we can truly trust. And it is in that regard that upon thorough reflection, Tomorrow Never Dies is not only one of the most socially relevant films in the history of Bond, but film as a whole. In true Bond fashion, the writers have taken this concept to an extent that is huge and actually quite horrifying. The sinking of the Devonshire is a shocking sequence which perfectly hits home how deplorable the villains are as they mangle the ship and subsequently slaughter the survivors with nihilistic abandon. And all of this horror is in aid of boosting ratings. The villain of the film, Elliot Carver, is an incredibly underrated villain in the annals of Bond history because he is in essence petty as all get out. He is willing to massacre people, start an international conflict, and his endgame? Carver finally gets broadcast rights in China, the one nation that prevents his global domination of the media. The way Carver reveals this scheme is so abhorrent because we as viewers are used to villains with big, megalomaniacal plans for humanity. And with Carver, you're just taken aback that he would go to such lengths for such a self-serving cause. But that's not the only win that this film boasts. The action in this film runs the gamut from land, sea, and air. The pre-credit sequence in the arms bazaar is a masterpiece of escalating tension as we get sucker punched with a race against time scenario. Following that, there's the parking garage car chase in Hamburg. Where most car chases run open roads and straightaways, this one is confined and claustrophobic, and the added fun of the BMW 750iL being a smart car adds an additional touch of fun. The third action centerpiece, the motorcycle chase through the streets of Saigon, is absolutely masterful and made more manic seeing as both Bond and Wei Lin are handcuffed together, and the two of them are forced to work together in order to drive this bike. Honestly, while Brosnan's era was rife with standout action sequences, the aforementioned ones, even ones I didn't mention, are, in my humble opinion, the best of his run. Tomorrow Never Dies also has some amazing character moments that actually focus on Bond's compulsion to push people away. While Terry Hatcher's time in the movie is brief, she has some incredible scenes where she confronts Bond on his need to avoid actual human connection. Bond works in an occupation where relationships can be a liability, and he has suffered losses because he made attempts to have a normal life. We see that he did have a fondness for Paris, and she more or less had genuine affection for him. While her living would have been a legitimate bit of solace for Bond, in the end his life will always take more than it gives, and at this point it could be safely concluded that Bond is pretty much condemned. In my estimation, the real star of this movie, in many ways more than Bond, was Michelle Yeoh as Wei Lin. While Bond has worked with fellow agents before, up till now only a few of them have ever been as capable as Wei Lin. The film even takes the time to showcase her abilities in a kinetic fight scene between her and a hit squad, and she practically takes them down on her own. She is one of the few Bond girls who is actually less of a Bond girl and more of a heroine on an even keel with Bond. Even in the end, when she's in peril, she still takes the opportunity to throw Bond the detonators in aid of blowing up Carver's missile. While their tryst at the end of the movie can be construed as forced, an argument could be made that they just saved the world, let them do what they want to do. Nevertheless, the likes of Wei Lin had been seldom seen in movies up to this point, and one can safely conclude that she set many bold standards in the way heroines are portrayed in films since. Honestly, I'm gushing when it comes to this film, and I could really go on all day regarding my feelings towards it. While there are better Bond films in the franchise, as you can tell from this film's placement on the list, this one is one of the ones I always pop in on a night when I just want to watch a Brosnan. If there is a con to this film, I suppose it can be that Jonathan Pryce is, while he's wonderful in this movie, he does tend to veer dangerously into campy territory by the end. But while the examples to come all have traits that dwarf this film on a quality scale, Tomorrow Never Dies, for my money, will always be hot off the presses. And that ain't fake news.